righty, welcome everyone. And I always look forward to our time together. I am especially excited because I had an potential insight into this morning's reading, which is the Transfiguration. So without further ado, why don't we begin with a gathering prayer. Holy One, we give you thanks for this day and for this opportunity to come together and to ponder the sacred words of long ago. We ask you to prepare our minds to receive the wisdom that you are waiting to impart to us, that you prepare our hearts that we might embrace it, and that you empower us to go forth and to live it. And all this we ask through our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Alrighty, so this Sunday we will be looking at the Transfiguration. Welcome, Jane. And this is one of those stories that is challenging for ministers because the lectionary is a 3-year cycle. So most of the readings come up once every 3 years. However, there are certain stories that come up every year, obviously, Christmas and Easter, and the Transfiguration is one of them. The Transfiguration story always is in the lectionary on the last Sunday of Epiphany. And you think about it, Epiphany is all about revelation, and it begins with the star of Bethlehem leading the wise men to Bethlehem and the Christ child. And it occurred to me the other day that it ends, hello Leslie, it ends with Jesus on that mountain where he is shining like the stars. And so it's kind of interesting that it's bookended by light. And so the story of the Transfiguration is the last Sunday before we start Lent. So a week from today, yikes, is Ash Wednesday. All of a sudden I just realized I got to get some lobster meat. Okay, so I just made that note to myself. Last night, as I was tossing and turning in bed, I began to focus on the sermon. And this morning when I woke up, all of a sudden I had this different perspective on the Transfiguration that I had never looked at it in this particular way. And so as we listen to the story of the resurrection of the Transfiguration, I'm going to give you a question to ponder. Why did Jesus climb that mountain? What was the point and the purpose of everything that happened up there? And we will.
Now about 8 days after these sayings, he took with him Peter and John and James, and went up on the mountain to pray. And as he was praying, the appearance of his face was altered, and his clothing became dazzling white. And behold, 2 men were talking with him, Moses and Elijah, who appeared in glory and spoke of his departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now Peter and those who were with him were heavy with sleep. But when they became fully awake, they saw his glory, and the 2 men who stood with him. And as the men were parting from him, Peter said to Jesus, Master, it is good that we are here. Let us make 3 tents, one for you, and one for Moses, and one for Elijah, not knowing what he said. As he was saying these things, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were afraid as they entered the cloud. And a voice came out of the cloud saying, This is my Son, my chosen one. Listen to him. And when the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone. And they kept silent and told no one in those days anything of what they had seen. On the next day, when they had come down from the mountain, a great crowd met him, and behold, a man from the crowd cried out, "Teacher, I beg you to look at my son, for he is my only child. And behold, a spirit seizes him, and he suddenly cries out. It convulses him so that he foams at the mouth and shatters him, and will hardly leave him. And I begged your disciples to cast it out, but they could not." Jesus answered, "O faithless and twisted generation, how long am I to be with you and bear with you? Bring your son here." While he was coming, the demon threw him to the ground and convulsed him. But Jesus rebuked the unclean spirit and healed the boy and gave him back to his father. And all were astonished at the majesty of God.
All righty. So questions, comments, and conundrums.
I'm intrigued by what you said at the very beginning.
Okay.
Saying that, and this is a liturgical
Okay.
approach. That you said that the here we have the Epiphany bookended by this event, the Transfiguration.
Mm-hmm.
And I read an interesting article yesterday, and it was pointing out that this is one of the principal times that the Church of Rome is at variation with the common lectionary calendar, and that they celebrate Transfiguration Sunday as the first Sunday of Lent.
Interesting. I did not know that.
And that I think the reason was that they felt that the idea was that you pondered this event in a Lenten setting, a manner and approach.
So
Which
I can understand.
Very kind of an interesting theological discussion.
I can see the case, because one of the things that we know is that when Jesus came down from the Mount of the Transfiguration, in Luke's gospel, it says he set his face to go to Jerusalem. And so in that sense, it could be seen as the beginning of the Lenten journey. Yes, Don?
Verse 3.
There's no verse 3.
Number 3.
The third,
31.
31. Okay. Who appeared in glory and spoke of his departure, which he was about to accomplish in Jerusalem.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
That's the justification right there.
Yeah, exactly. And that actually ties it in more directly with the Transfiguration story. Yes, exactly. So, do you have the answer to my question? Why did Jesus climb the mountain, and why did all of this happen up there?
I think to encourage, but I think like Moses and Elijah encouraged Jesus.
Encourage
he
Jesus.
had to go. I mean, I know he's God and
Yeah,
everything, but there are other scriptures like when he said if he could take this cup, whatever. So, I mean, it was a tough. Anyway, you slice it. It was a really tough, hard thing. It was coming for him.
Yes. So.
And then also, I think it encouraged perhaps the disciples, because they were also going to go through a tough time of not. They had to go for 3 days at least.
Yeah.
With just still trying to believe, even though it looked like the bad guys won. They had to try to believe that they didn't.
So.
And that's hard too.
So what we have is the possibility that Jesus went up that mountain, and everything that happened on that mountain was to encourage him. Now, that's interesting, because generally when we look at the story of the Transfiguration, we focus on Peter and James and John, and we view it as all designed for their benefit. And that may be definitely a part of it, but you're raising the possibility, Leslie, that what happened on that mountain was for the benefit also of Jesus. And that's kind of where I'm going with all of this, because, I've always looked at what happened on that mountain primarily through the eyes of Peter, and that this was all for him. But what you say raises the question: did Jesus ever get discouraged?
Oh, sounded like he was a tad discouraged when he said, "Oh, he faith wasn't good."
Yeah. Okay, so he comes down from I'll get to you in a second. So he comes down from the mountain, and what happens down there could have left him feeling discouraged, and he lashes out. And the reason why he is so discouraged and he reacts the way he is because if you go back a chapter or two in Luke's gospel, Jesus says to the disciples, I give you the power to bind and loose spirits and all of this. And they've gone out and they come back and they say, oh, we did all these amazing things. We healed people. We did this, we did that. And now he's up there on the mountain and they can't do it. And so there's a possibility that Jesus is standing there saying to myself, you know what, if you can't do what I told you could do when I'm up there in the mountain, what are you going to do when I'm gone for good and I can't, hold you by the hand? So definitely, I think he's discouraged there.
I think the other thing you can relate it to is when he's in the garden waiting for them to come and get him, waiting away. God, but not my will, but your will be done, because I'm afraid.
So in the Garden of Gethsemane, he says to them, could you not stay awake 1 hour? They're off sleeping and he's praying and in great anguish. I'd have to go back and look at which gospel says that, the sweat came off like great drops of blood. So he comes back and he says, could you not stay awake for just 1 hour? I also think of what happened in the Garden of Gethsemane when they come to arrest him, and Peter draws that sword and cuts off the ear of the high priest's slave, and Jesus says, have I been with you this long and you still don't get it? Put away your sword. He who lives by the sword will die by the sword. He had to have been discouraged at times that all of these people just didn't get what he was all about. What was it that the people wanted from him?
Oh, they wanted a military thing.
Yes, they wanted a military Messiah, a conquering Christ who was going to lead them to victory against the Romans. Jesus had no interest in that. In fact, he says before Pilate, my kingdom is not of this world. So did Jesus get discouraged? And my guess is that, yes, he did.
He also got very impatient at times. In John, when he goes through a series of miracles in a very short section of John, they keep questioning him. Who are you? What is your authority? And all of their questions come from what they know materially as humans. And he keeps saying, I'm not from here. Don't you get it? And he says it over and over and over again. And they don't get it through the whole thing until they come finally down to the point where he cures the blind man on a Sunday. And they say, you got it, because he breaks our rule of saying Sunday.
Yep, he heals on the Sabbath and he gets in trouble for that. If I'm Jesus, there's a part of me that's saying, no good deed goes unpunished. Here I do something good and you don't like it. So I think we can safely say that Jesus was and did get discouraged. Do we ever get discouraged? Do you ever get discouraged? Yes.
Hard to be anything but these days.
Yeah, hard to be anything but these days. I've said probably a dozen times over the last couple of weeks that if there's another surge in this pandemic, I don't know if I can deal with it. I've just about, And then on top of that, we've got the whole situation in the Ukraine. And, how discouraging is that? And, it makes you wonder, does evil triumph? And, sometimes you look at the reality and you say, sometimes it looks like it does. Although in the grand scale, the long term, no, it won't. So I guess the question shouldn't be, do you get discouraged? The question is, when was the last time you were discouraged?
So you're going to say the question should be, how do you deal with it?
Well, that's my next question, So when was the last time you were discouraged? Oh, probably about 5 minutes ago. So how do we deal with discouragement? And how does what happened on that mountain help us with the reality of being discouraged?
Jesus looked the same thing we should look for.
What is that?
We use the term keep the faith. Believe more than anything else. Believe in God. And by doing that, that is our sustenance. The million places in the Bible it says that.
Okay.
That's our manna, that's our sustenance. That's what keeps us going, is our belief in what our teachings through Jesus of God are.
Okay.
I think even more practical than that. He
Okay.
shows us, he went and talked to older, seemingly, obviously, Jesus is timeless, but to, people of faith. And he said, or maybe they all knew probably why they were there,
Okay.
Give me some, good stuff.
So are you referring to Moses and Elijah?
Right.
Okay. So Moses.
So if we get discouraged, we can go talk to you. Or,
right. So
somebody.
Yeah. So
a friend.
So clearly, what's going here on the mountain, up there on the mountain, is for the sake of Peter and the disciples, but it's also for the sake of Jesus. And he's being validated when you think about it. Okay. Moses and Elijah are there, the two pillars of the Jewish faith. Moses, the one who brought the 10 Commandments, brought the law down from the top of Mount Sinai, and Elijah, the greatest of all of the prophets, and the prophets were basically the interpreters of God's law, and they were there. Look, they're basically giving up a pep talk. They're talking about his departure, which was to be accomplished in Jerusalem. They're basically saying, Jesus, you're on the right track. Good for you.
I think there's a perspective that we need to look at as far as who was gathered there. Who was brought up into heaven in what we don't consider the normal way? Only
Elijah.
And supposedly Moses, because they don't know. Moses disappeared.
Well, interesting.
These are God's favored ones whom God talked with.
Right.
According to what we have.
Moses is the only one who ever saw God.
Yeah, exactly. So it would be a logical combination of God's favorite beings on earth, of which Jesus is one. He put his son on earth to get together. That it's a logical combination for support.
Yeah. So I think you're both right. I think that faith has a role to play in those moments of discouragement. Okay. What was the famous? It was on a wall in the Warsaw Ghetto. Something about I believe in the sun even when it's not shining. I believe in love even when it's not there. I'll have to go back and look at that, but that popped into my head. And, Jesus becomes dazzling, like begins to shine like the stars and the sun. And, that's affirming Jesus. And Moses and Elijah being there to talk to him about his departure, which was to be accomplished at Jerusalem. They're giving him a pep talk.
Halftime speech.
A what?
A halftime speech.
Halftime speech, yes, they're in the locker room and it's halftime, and and go out there and win one for the Gipper, so to speak. But yeah, but also, I think the voice that speaks from the heaven. I always saw that as for Peter and the disciples and for us. This is my son, the beloved, the chosen one. Listen to him. Okay, yeah, that message is for us, but put yourself in Jesus's shoes. Doesn't that also affirm him and lift him up and say, okay, I can do this?
I think the idea of going to the mountain for us, because at that time we viewed heaven as this direction very specifically.
Yeah.
And I don't think that symbolism, other than the one who wrote it, was half as important. I think the way I would phrase it, because you have elements of heaven wherever it is all together glowing, the light being, I am the light, and that is the light of heaven. I think Jesus went to heaven for support.
He went to
heaven for support.
You mean when he was on that mountain?
He went to whether it was on a mountain or somewhere else, that glow indicates he wasn't here, he was somewhere else.
Okay.
And my thought is he went to his Father for support, and his Father brought people there to support him.
Okay. So I agree with that absolutely, but I'm also wondering, so why were Peter, James, and John there?
But I think it's interesting the way that the Interpreter's Bible puts it. Jesus sought resources for his great ordeal on the mountain, but Peter supposed that he uses a site, a place from as a place to escape from the necessity of the ordeal.
I didn't get that.
In other words, that Peter is using it. Let's stay up here. Let's.
Sure.
Yes, let's stay away from this problem. Let's isolate ourselves away from the.
Yeah, Peter wants to build those booths or huts or whatever it's referred to. Different translations use different words because he wants to stay up there. Okay, and the reality is that they can't stay up there.
He wants almost like a permanent spiritual retreat.
Right, but the building of those booths or whatever, isn't that also affirming of Jesus? I mean, when you think about it, it's saying, this experience has made me realize even more so, how special you are. So, yeah, there's a selfish element in it because Peter wants to stay up there and make the euphoria last.
I think that being there is just a proof of the human element that still looks at things from the viewpoint of earth versus the meeting in heaven, all in one place. Because the building tents, that's a human thing to do.
Yep, absolutely. And go ahead. I'm sorry?
They're also witnesses.
The witnesses. That's right. The witnesses. Yes. So there is that reason why they're there. Because obviously there needs to be someone who can say what happened up there. And it says, and they kept, in verse 36, and they kept silent and told no one in those days anything of what they had seen. So it was sometime later that they shared this experience. Let me ask you this question. When you get discouraged, what do people tend to do? Withdraw. Can't deal with this, and you shut everybody out. Go ahead. No.
I was just wondering if Moses and Elijah were like leaders.
Yep. Moses and Elijah.
Ultimate leader.
The two big figures of the.
Right. By bringing Peter, James, and John, he is like he chose them.
Yeah.
So is that like an indication, like you're going to be the leaders when I'm gone? So you're sort of my second in command. So you need to be present for all the important stuff.
It's quite possible that Jesus chose those three because they were his first lieutenants, so to speak. And there are other instances where they are singled out. In fact, going back to the Garden of Gethsemane, we're told that all the disciples are with Jesus, and then he goes on a little further and he brings Peter, James, and John with him. But I had another epiphany a number of years ago when it comes to why it's only the three. Okay, so when it says that Jesus took with him, I'm trying to see, where's that? Yes, very first verse. Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and went up on the mountain to pray. There are two possibilities there. One is that it's telling us that Jesus literally singled out those three disciples, which then makes you wonder how the other disciples felt down at the bottom of the mountain. And maybe that's why they couldn't cast out that demon or heal that man's son. It's because, oh, well, Jesus didn't take us to the top of the mountain, so I guess he doesn't really have confidence in us. That's one scenario. There's also another possibility, and I put it this way in some little background information. We know, or we believe, that the Mount of Transfiguration is or was Mount Hermon, which is in southern Lebanon. It's the highest mountain in the Holy Land, and I think it's 5,616 feet. For some reason, that number sticks out in my head. So it's a significant mountain. And having been in Israel and northern Israel, I know that in the summer, when you look north, you can see Mount Hermon, and it still has some snow on the peak. So, it's a significant mountain. And one day I was thinking about it, and I thought, isn't it possible that Jesus got up that morning and he said, okay, guys, we're going to climb this mountain. And 9 of the disciples said, now we're good, Jesus. We'll catch you when you come down. In other words, we don't know. You can't rule out the possibility that Peter, James, and John were the only ones who were willing to go up to the top of the mountain with Jesus. Maybe, maybe not. But there's definitely a reason why Jesus has at least 3 disciples there. One is to be witnesses. But also, I think that, there's strength in numbers. And I think having them there serves the purpose of helping Jesus in his discouragement. I mean, look, we said Peter wanted to build those tents, those huts, those booths for him. And yes, it's Peter wanting to stay on the mountain, but it's also affirming to Jesus. And so what I see in the story is when it's discouraging, or when you're discouraged, to resist the temptation to withdraw. And, it's funny.
Well, they say one of the best things to do if you're fighting depression is to do volunteer work.
Do volunteer work, to be, yes, yep. So you get discouraged or depressed. You can't help others without helping yourself. And it also puts you in contact with other people. So when you do volunteer work, you're helping others. And in that sense, you're also helping yourself. You're with, people. Absolutely. I'll give you an example from last Sunday. Okay. And I'll preface it by saying that as people have come back and felt comfortable coming back, invariably they will say one thing to me before the service. And after the service, they will say the same thing as well. Before the service, they'll say something along the lines of, referring to the live stream every Sunday morning. They'll say, I really so I enjoyed going to church in my bathrobe with a cup of coffee. And then after the service is over, they'll come out and they'll say, you know what? It's not the same as being here. Why is that? People.
And the piano sounds better.
Yeah, the piano sounds better. Although Doug Lane, who set up our sound system, said it really sounds pretty good on live. I didn't realize it, but recording and getting sound from the piano on a live stream is one of the most difficult instruments to get right. But yeah, it's the people. Okay, so think about it. You know, hopefully you come out and you're feeling better. You're feeling good. Why? Because you're with God and you're with other people. Okay, and other people who are here for each other. Okay, and last Sunday was an example of that. During the prayers of the faithful, I believe it was Andy Graham who mentioned about Freddie Connell. Was it Andy Graham who mentioned about Freddie Connell, D. Connell's little grandson?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought it was. So, you know, when he shared that announcement, there was energy, okay, and you know, I could see people wanting to just applaud, and you know, that's a great example of why I've never been opposed to applause in church. Okay, there's some people they don't like it, and I understand that, but when people are applauding like that, they're basically saying amen. You know, it's an act of faith. You know, we thank you, Lord. You know, this is wonderful news. We're so full of joy. Okay, and I don't know about all of you, but I could feel the Spirit in that moment. Okay, here's the question, and I understand that there are some people. The live stream is their only way of being connected on Sunday morning. But my question is this. Do you think people at home felt that same spirit, that same energy, that same sense of community? I don't think so.
Probably not. I think back in the, you know, when we all had to live stream.
Yep.
Or even we didn't come up and got vaccinated. If there was something like mentioned that was like I knew the person,
Mm-hmm.
then I felt like more like in commune with everybody. But for like, you know, Joe and I never met this kid.
Yep,
but,
yep.
like, you know,
Yeah.
so in instances like that, like probably not.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, Jesus is up there on the mountain and he isn't alone. Okay. So discouraged, it's faith and community. And that's really what it's all about. And that's what we have to offer. And frankly, we just need to do a better job of for lack of a better word, marketing it. And you know, there's just so much. I know that, you know, every Sunday, it's funny, you know, I joke sometimes, you know, I'm here every Sunday because I'm paid to be here. Okay. Unlike everybody in the pews who isn't paid to be here. But even when I'm away on vacation, I will go to a service somewhere. And even though it's people I don't know, it's still, well, I may not know them, but I know the God that, you know, they're worshiping. And even so, there's still, I still feel a sense of community. It may not be as great as a sense of community that I feel here, but I do feel a sense of community.
Tie that binds, really.
Say again, please.
It's a tie that binds us all
Yes,
together.
blessed be the tie that binds. Ooh,
You know?
maybe I should change the last hymn Sunday. Blessed be the tie that binds.
It's a common ground.
Common ground.
If you, there's a comfortableness of a common ground. If you were to, during the fall, go visit a friend in the community and the kids are involved, you might go and have a wonderful time at the sports game that those children are involved in.
Okay.
If you're in hometown on it and you go, there's no doubt you're going to root for your hometown because it's a common ground. It's something you've built together on it.
Yeah.
And that built together means something to people.
Yeah. It's one of the ways I describe it is what we do on Sunday morning and what we're all about is the complete opposite of, and I don't even know if this show is still on TV, Survivor. Is that show still on?
I think so.
I have never watched an episode of Survivor.
The philosophy of it's wrong.
The philosophy is, the theology of it is wrong.
Yes.
You know, it's everyone for themselves, and it brings out the worst in people. And I thought to myself at various points, wouldn't it be wonderful if there could be a television show where everybody comes together to meet a challenge and they succeed together?
I've been told that there, a number of years ago, I don't know anything about it, but there actually is was a television show in England that did the complete opposite. It was about this in a rural situation in Scotland, and the idea was that the people had to work together in order to survive.
People had to work together.
And it was the total opposite of the American survivor.
Yeah.
Which sounded really wonderful.
Yeah, I would love to see a television show like that in this country.
Yes.
Here's a question. Do you think it would get good ratings?
Probably be on PBS.
Probably be on PBS. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, where they don't have to make a profit, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like all the other things, like the series Big Brother, or a movie which I never really want to watch is the Hunger Games.
Oh, the Hunger Games. I don't understand. I've never seen that. I have a vague understanding of what the plot is.
Like a dystopian.
Yes, in other words, the idea was the prize was you gain the prize by killing off all the other participants.
Oh, really? You
Yeah.
kill off all the other participants?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a reality I want no part of.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, that, it's like the bad cartoon of the little old lady who was sitting in a rocking chair, and there was the embroidered motto over her head which says, "Watch out for number one."
Watch out for number one.
Yeah, I mean, but it's that type of attitude is
I think the Hunger Games, so they were like children, they were forced.
Yeah, so they're not for adults, the children.
It was a commentary on
Yeah,
like adults behaving bad.
yeah.
but it's this idea about winning at
Any cost, winning at any cost.
The Squid Game, that's one that was just here, it was Korean, but it made like.
What's that one?
It's called the Squid Game.
Oh, I haven't heard that
It's
one.
I think it's on Netflix, we don't get Netflix.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
it's Korean, so it's all in subtitles, but
Okay.
it's like this same
Mhm.
concept. It's like a fight to the people that are in it are like, they are very, very poor apparently.
Okay.
There's like a big money prize, but I think it's
Yeah.
like the last person
Yeah.
alive gets the money or
We've-
whatever, and like the rich people
Yeah.
have like invented it, and they're like, it's like a commentary on,
Mhm.
like it's their society.
Society.
It's worse than ours with the, the
You know,
wealth gap.
yeah, it's gotten to the point. It's gotten to the point where it isn't just winning. It's almost to the point where it isn't enough that I win, it's everybody else has to lose. And that is so contrary to what our faith is all about.
That's very genteel. The brutality and the brutalness of humankind is proof that things like the brutal war of Santa Anna against the people of Texas. He had to win for his own thing, not for Mexico.
Yeah.
That was his philosophy. And he didn't want to just beat them, he wanted to destroy them. That's the horror of the power of that emotion in thinking. It is bad.
Yeah.
You have that very basic thing of good and evil, and that's the evil side, and we need to fear it.
You know,
in many
here's something that just occurred to me, that you look at all the things that lead to discouragement, all the things that are going on, and why they're going on. And you look at our faith, it's the complete opposite of all of those things. And, you know, I hadn't thought about this, but when you get discouraged, we talked about withdrawing and all of that. But isn't another element of discouragement that you begin to doubt yourself?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I think so.
Yes.
You doubt your ability.
You doubt your ability. And what happens on the mountain there is that Jesus is affirmed. And so, you know, that's one of the things that I see about our faith, is that our faith isn't just about believing in God. It's believing in God so that we can believe in ourselves. And, you know, that's something that I see in Jesus over and over and over again, is he works to help us believe in ourselves. He said to the disciples, you know, you see these works that I do? Even greater than works than these will you do. When the man who was crippled was beside the pool of Bethesda, and they believed back then that if the waters of the pool stirred, it meant that an angel's wing had brushed against it and the first person in the pool would get healed. And so Jesus sees this man and he says, you know, don't you want to be healed? And the man says, well, I've got no one to pick me up. You know, these other people who are getting healed, they can run over and jump in the pool. I can't, you know. And so it's almost as if he's saying to Jesus, you know, will you stay and put me in the pool? And Jesus says, you want to walk? Get up and walk. Rise, take up your pallet and walk. And also, when Jesus healed someone, what did he almost always say?
Don't tell it.
Well, yes, he would go and say, don't tell anyone. That's part of the messianic secret. But he also would say something else. He says, your faith has made you well. Okay? So in other words, Jesus doesn't say, run off and tell everybody this amazing thing that I've done for you. Just remember, your faith has made you well. Okay? And you think about it, if you're ill or have a disability, that's got to be discouraging. You know, you doubt yourself. And what Jesus is doing over and over again is saying, don't doubt yourself. You know, you have inherent goodness in you. You have talents, abilities. And so, yeah, it's believe in yourself. And that's what's happening on the mountain. Okay. Moses and Elijah are there. They're basically saying, don't second guess yourself, Jesus. Don't doubt yourself here. The voice from heaven, this is my beloved son, listen to him. Well, that's also speaking to Jesus. In the sense it's saying, you know, don't doubt yourself. Okay. And so, you know, I look at all of this and it's not a sin to get discouraged. Okay. The antidote is to do what Jesus did, which is to get close to God and to surround yourself with people who are on the journey with you. Any thoughts, questions?
No, I think because if you really begin to doubt yourself, then you begin to devalue yourself. You lose all confidence in yourself, and you believe you are not deserving of anything good.
Right. Yep.
And
It becomes a downward
it
spiral.
becomes a downward spiral.
Right. Absolutely.
Almost to the point of salvation.
Yeah. So now my challenge is to take all of this good input and somehow put it into a sermon. So stay tuned for Sunday. Thank you, everyone. We're done.